Why do you dive into writing a book about and studying the devil? That seems like antithetical to what we want to do. Why? What drove you to do that?
Well, spoiler alert, even a biography about the devil ends up being just part of Jesus' story. The devil is honestly a footnote in his own book, for real. So I wrote a book last year right there on the shelf called A God Named Josh, and it's a myth buster about Jesus. And I decided to do a book about what is considered, Jesus' equal and opposite. It's nothing like that at all. This is not a arm wrestling competition of like, oh, who's going to win in the end? It's more like a judo master who just is tossing his enemy, using his own strength against him time and time again. It's important to remember that everything the devil does is ultimately being used as part of God's ultimate purpose, which is to restore all things to himself. So the kingdom's invading, and the devil is the prince of this world, and he's losing every single day.
Well, let's talk about the enemy then. There's a Hollywood version of him. He shows up in movies, and he's always ultra powerful and has everything in his way in a lot of cases. What is the reality? Separate the Hollywood myth from the biblical reality for us.
Okay, so my book is called A Devil Named Lucifer, and that's not because his name is actually Lucifer. It's just that's what we've named him. The word Lucifer does not appear anywhere in the original Hebrew or Greek Bible. It appears in a later Latin translation. But what's interesting is the word Lucifer isn't ever applied to the devil. There is a light. Lucifer means light bearer or light bringer. The first match ever created was called a Lucifer. And so Jesus is described as a light bearer, and creation is described as a light bearer, and Christians are described as light bearers. So we've got Jesus is a Lucifer, Christians are Lucifers, creation is a Lucifer, but the devil is not Lucifer. He's not a Lucifer. So let's just start with that, the fact that that's not even his name. The Bible talks about donkeys more than it talks about the devil. There's more stories about olive oil than Satan. He actually ranks between cheese and bread, so you can literally make a Satan sandwich. He only speaks 250 words in the Bible, and roughly half of those are him just quoting or misquoting scripture. So the Bible talks about him more than he actually shows up in the Bible. It's when you actually study it, he's just not there very much.
I love that. So why is it so important that we know this? And how will knowing that he isn't really all that to be feared, how does that change our walk with Jesus?
So I grew up in a tradition where the devil's like on your shoulder at all times, right? He's like living there perched. He's personally tormenting every person on this planet. But there is nothing in the Bible that says that the devil is like God and that he's omnipresent, that he can be all places at once. The Bible does say that he goes between heaven and earth to accuse Christians before the throne of heaven. And that's what he does for a living. If you actually translate, so his name isn't Satan or devil either. Those are just English words. It's like Jesus' real name wasn't Jesus. It was Yehoshua ben Yehoseph. But through transliteration, we ended up with English Jesus. If we were to pick two words that would hit with the same impact that the Hebrew and Greek readers would have read when they read their words for Satan and devil, we would call him accuser adversary. That's what the devil does. He accuses adversarially. He's a bad faith lawyer, basically, a prosecuting attorney. So if he's going back and forth between heaven and earth, he's not sitting on your shoulder at all times. If you actually do the math, between 8 billion of us on this planet over 100 years, that means the devil himself would only get to spend 0.39 seconds with each of us over our lifetime. So there's a very good chance that you've never met anyone who's had a personal encounter with Satan himself. That said, most of the millions of people who fought in World War II never had a face-to-face encounter with Adolf Hitler. But as we know, they were encountering his devices and his traps and his schemes from North Africa all the way to the Russian border. He was everywhere. And so that's more how the devil works. He's the father of lies, and he's been planting landmines all over the world that he just wants us to step on and just be like, you know what, maybe life would be happier with that woman instead of my wife. Or, maybe interest isn't a sin. And we just step on these lies and these landmines. And the devil can never take a Christian away, but he can certainly try to ruin your life and blow off your leg.
Well, let's talk about that then, because we've as you've said, he's not omnipotent or omnipresent or anything like that. but yet there's a lot of landmines going off. It sort of begs the question, why is there so much deception in the world? Why is there so much of people who aren't following Christ? So how do we overcome that?
So I think a huge part is to get a good picture of what the devil actually looks like in your mind. So we have this idea that he's like this red-skinned, fire-breathing dude. The Bible doesn't describe him like that. Revelation 12 suggests that he actually spews water and not fire. The cape and tights is from a Faust play. His wings are from Dante's Inferno. The pitchfork is probably the Roman god of Mars. We've kind of made this amalgamation of what the devil looks like that's just not real. The devil is a spirit. He doesn't have a physical body, but the Bible does say that he disguises himself as an angel of light. He presents as a radiant messenger. He pretends to be a Lucifer, a light bearer. And so we actually shouldn't be looking out for things that are like scary and repulsive, like helping the poor or like things like that. We should be looking at things that are actually attractive, that are seducing to us. So look out for things like sex without commitment, or knowledge without wisdom, wealth without contribution, or tolerance without discernment. We want to look out for like power without stewardship and being without love. Everything that glitters isn't gold. And that's, I think, the bigger thing to understand is like, look out for what looks shiny.
Wow, that's so good. And I think that's such a huge distinguisher. In our last moment here, of course, we know that there are princes and powers and principalities. So speak to us in this last moment. How do those other lower beings, right? How do they get along in this world? And do they have an impact on our lives?
We don't know how many demons there are. Some people think there's just like an unlimited amount, billions and billions of them. There's only a handful, less than 5 actually named in Scripture. So there's very few. I think the bigger thing that we need to remember is to right-size the devil and the demonic, and to, more importantly, really elevate how big God is. Jesus' good news is that the kingdom is invading. It's advancing into this world. And that's not just broadly into our countries, but deep into our hearts. And so we need to really understand how the devil works in regards to temptation, leading to footholds, leading to strongholds, so we can avoid temptation. See it, in fact, as a test to actually grow our character and to use the devil to advance God's kingdom. So let's just shrink the devil and just massively increase God.